All right, welcome. So if you're in product, HR, IT, or you're running international business, you know that getting a handle on a market like Bangladesh is way more than just looking at GDP numbers. It's really about decoding this complex web of people, policy, and technology. So today, we're going to break down what you actually need to know to talk effectively with your teams, your boss, and your customers. Let's get right into it.
I want to start with just one number, 1.6%. Right now, that probably doesn't mean much to you. It's just a number on a screen. But trust me, this tiny percentage is a massive clue about the entire labor situation in Bangladesh, and it has huge implications for how you do business there.
So what does it really mean? That's the big question we're digging into today. We're going to connect the dots all the way from the big economic picture right down to what's happening on the factory floor. This is about understanding the real forces shaping one of the most dynamic and, let's be honest, challenging markets in the world.
Here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with the country's big economic paradox. Then we'll go inside the modern workplace. After that, we'll profile the workforce itself, look at the coming automation wave, and we'll wrap it all up with a strategic playbook you can actually use.
Okay, first up, let's zoom out to the big picture. To really operate in Bangladesh, you have to get your head around this central tension. It's a story of absolutely incredible economic growth happening right alongside some really significant deep-seated vulnerabilities.
And this slide just lays it out so perfectly, right? On one hand, you've got this economic powerhouse. I mean, they've slashed the poverty rate, and the government is pouring money into special economic zones to bring in business. But then you look at the other side of the coin. The World Bank ranks it 168th out of 190 countries for ease of doing business. It's one of the most climate-vulnerable nations on Earth, and it really struggles to attract foreign investment. So what does that mean for you? It means you're operating in a high-risk, high-reward sandbox.
And these aren't just abstract risks on a PowerPoint slide. Climate change, for example, directly hits your supply chains and pushes waves of people into the cities. The social safety net? Well, it's a patchwork of over 100 different programs, which means there's almost no cushion for your workers if they lose their job. And, of course, ongoing issues with governance can throw a wrench in your plans at any moment.
Okay, so that's the macro view. But how does all this play out day to day, at the company level? Let's go inside the modern workplace. Because knowing the national stats is one thing, but what's actually happening on the ground? Well, you find this massive gap between the law and what's practiced in reality.
If you just read the law, the Bangladesh Labor Act of 2006, you'd think things look pretty good. It sets a 48-hour work week, mandates double pay for overtime, and sets up formal ways to handle disputes. It even says HR has to talk to union reps about policy changes. These are the official rules of the game.
And this is where that 1.6% number from the very beginning comes roaring back. It perfectly captures that gap. See, the right to collective bargaining is protected by law, but the actual number of workers covered by it? A tiny 1.6%. The law says disputes should be settled in 60 days. In reality, the courts are so jammed up, cases take years. The big takeaway here for any manager is crystal clear. You cannot rely on the legal framework alone to protect your people or your business. You have to build your own proactive systems.
But, it's not all doom and gloom. The smart companies, both local and multinational, aren't just waiting around. Firms like Phone are bringing in modern HR practices. We're talking KPIs, balanced scorecards, 360-degree reviews. It just goes to show it is possible to build a high-performing, modern culture, even in a tough environment.
So we've looked at the economy and the workplace. Now let's talk about what is hands down the country's most important asset. It's people. Because understanding who makes up your workforce is absolutely key to any long-term strategy.
Get this. A full third of the entire population is between 18 and 35 years old. That is a massive demographic dividend. For your product and marketing teams, that's your next generation of customers. For HR and IT, it's a huge pool of potential talent just waiting to be developed.
But when you start to slice the data, you see some real challenges. This chart shows what we call a classic leaky pipeline. Women make up over a third of the workforce, which is great. But look at the top. Less than 5% of top management roles are held by women. For any HR team, this should be screaming opportunity. There's a huge pool of untapped leadership talent here, but you're going to need proactive strategies to develop and keep it.
And that youth bold we just talked about? Well, it comes with a major catch. This chart shows that almost a quarter of young people are what's called NEET. That's not in education, employment, or training. We're talking millions of young people totally disconnected from the economy. That's a huge loss of potential, a source of social instability, and a major headache when you're trying to find qualified people.
And this quote from one of our sources just hits the nail on the head. It's not just about unemployment, it's a skills gap. The education system simply isn't producing graduates with the skills that modern companies need, and a lot of employers are hesitant to invest in the training to fix it. If you're a manager trying to build a team there, this is your daily reality.
Okay, now let's shift gears and look at what's coming over the horizon. Because on top of everything we've just discussed, there's a massive wave of technological change, automation, that's about to crash into the Bangladeshi labor market. For anyone in IT or product development, this is your world.
Just take a look at this. The trend is so clear. The lower the education level of the job, the higher the risk from automation. By the mid-2030s, which is not that far away, more than 40% of these low-skilled jobs, the very backbone of the country's economy, are at risk.
And let's be really specific here. This isn't some generic threat. It is a direct and disproportionate threat to the ready-made garment sector and to the female workers who make up over 73% of the most vulnerable roles, like sewing and cutting. This is a fundamental challenge to millions of livelihoods and to the stability of the entire supply chain.
So what's the game plan? How do you build resilience? Well, there is a path forward, and it's got a few key parts. First, the economy has to diversify beyond just making clothes. Think pharmaceuticals, IT services. Second, there needs to be a massive push to upskill the workforce to prepare them for new kinds of jobs. And finally, and this is so critical, there has to be a real effort to empower women in tech, breaking down the old social barriers holding them back. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground. We've seen the good, the bad, and the complicated. So the big question for you is, now what? What do you actually do with all of this information? This last section is all about turning these big ideas into an actionable plan for your company.
The key to managing all this complexity is HR analytics. And look, this isn't just about fancy dashboards. It's about a process, a way of thinking that turns raw data from your people and your suppliers into real business intelligence. It's what lets you see what's coming around the corner so you can actually do something about it.
And here's a simple but really powerful framework you can take back to your team. It starts with identifying what you need to know and capturing the right data. Then you store and manage it properly. But the magic happens in that last part, where you analyze the data to make smarter decisions about your people and your business strategy.
Let's make this real. How would your teams actually use this? In that first identify and capture step, your HR team could be mapping every single role in your supply chain and figuring out its automation risk. At the same time, managers could be tracking the real reasons people are leaving. Then, in the analyze and predict phase, you can ask powerful questions. Does our training program actually make people stay longer? Which of our suppliers are most vulnerable to disruption? This is how you stop just reacting to problems and start predicting them.
So we'll leave you with this question because it really gets to the heart of the entire strategic challenge. The opportunity in Bangladesh is, without a doubt, its incredible human potential. But unlocking that potential means you have to actively invest in making its people and the supply chains they power more resilient. The companies that figure out how to answer this question are the ones that are going to win.